Okay, so we talked about the code aspects. We really do need to be detail oriented, and this really has to do with the idea that doors have some pretty important functions. And all these elements that are provided here, I'm not going to go through each of them, but understand there's probably about, I'm going to say 25 to 30 pages of fine print in the chapter 10 code section just on door operations. And so you got to kind of spend time to understand those parts and how they affect your design. All right, so other elements is that we deal with is sometimes we're working with building standard doors. That means if you work for, say, the Irvine Company and you're down in South Coast, I mean, in Fashion Island, you're going to find that the doors are very similar because the landlord doesn't want a variety of doors and a variety of hardware and a variety of installations. He wants them all standardized. So when you walk down the hall, you see this kind of uniformity. You have to understand that there's a difference between standard doors, building standard doors, and custom doors. Now, oftentimes they'll grant permission to do a custom door inside the common area at the suite, but some of these custom doors get to be pretty elaborate. Now, if you happen to work in a retail establishment or in a specialty occupancy, then it's much easier to specify a door that might be unique and support your design requirements. So as a result, I want you to kind of think about that a little bit and understand that anytime we get involved in those unique applications, we have to be thoughtful of their installation, their constructability, how they work with that door, and you need to work pretty closely with the manufacturer to make sure you understand, how this best works. And then be advised that sometimes these doors aren't on the shelf. It takes time to fabricate them, and their availability might be limited. So you have to think about, that as well. Now, in the illustrations provided here, I wanted to show you this because there's a couple funny stories that go with this. This is our client, the Richard Nixon Library, and the guy there, that's my client. That's Ron Knoll, and he's the contracting officer for the National Archives, and I've known him for a long time. In fact, I talked to him today. In 2007 or 8, there was a fire that impacted Yorba Linda. And as a result, the exhibit area couldn't control the smoke that came into the building from the fires. And so Ron called me up and said, okay, we need to do something. We were actually already on site building the addition, but he said, we need to come up with some doors that separate the exhibit area from the common areas, both for security and for this environmental aspect. So the environmental aspect was that once the doors were in place, they could come inside this space and add CFM, which is cubic feet per minute of air, and that would pressurize this room, and no smoke could come in from the outside, making it through any of these door, openings or any of these door elements. But we had to close off the door, and he wanted it to be fancy. So we contacted a group, got this, came up with the design. The design had to have in it etched the National Archives logo. And so we got the PDF, we got the design of the logo, we sent it to them. This is sandblasted in and etched. And you can see them. There's one here, 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 here. They're all along there. They are placed in such a way that when this door opens back and opens back, they are all exactly lined up on top of each other. And it's not a simple task to do that. So as we were building this, this panel came in good, this panel came in good, this panel came in good, this panel came in bad. It had air bubbles in it. Now this is probably about probably about almost 11 feet, about 11 feet, close to 12 feet high. And these panels were about 3 feet, just under 3 feet, but were about 3/4 of an inch thick. And so we're at the meeting, we're looking at them. We had to cut the floor to put in a track here. This is a terrazzo floor, and so we had to do all this work at night. So my senior architect, Bob, was there at 2 o'clock in the morning watching them cut this floor in, and then we had to do structural work overhead to stabilize the doors because they're very, very heavy. So we got the doors installed. We found the air pockets in there. We rejected that panel. The total assembly was about $70,000. So we rejected this panel. It had to be rebuilt or reformed and brought back out and put in. And Ron tells me, oh, by the way, they have to return our logo in the glass because no one's allowed to have that except us. And so I had to call the manufacturer. First of all, he was not very happy about having to redo the panel, but I showed him the defects and they had to take the work back. But that the fact is that when they had to destroy the panel and had to somehow get this piece of glass back to us so that we could show it to the National Archives representative and that they could then make knowledge or make a note of the fact that the logo had not been somehow spirited away and was not being misused. By the way, when I showed the logo, it's only a piece of it. It's about this much of it. I showed it to my contracting officer, Ron. I go, what do you want it done with this? And he said, give it to the director. Maybe he wants it. He took it to the director goes, I don't want it. So Secor kept it. Anyway, it's a nice memento. I got a little piece of the logo and everybody seemed okay with that. But this just is to provide you with how some of these specialized applications, we look at them like we go to the mall and we see them and we don't think that much of them. But believe me, they're pretty complicated systems. And it's good to understand them, especially if you desire to use them in your designs. Okay, so the security functionalities, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that not every door requires the rigor of security. Some of them require that because of sensitive information or sensitive access requirements, and there's a whole industry in security. They will help you. They will, if a manufacturer, if a client is someone who's got a manufacturing operation and they want it protected, they probably already have a security hardware group. And that would include, the card keyed access and all that other stuff. Even at school, they have lockdown activities that they do in each of the classrooms. So if you tried to go to the classroom today, you'd find you couldn't get in there because of the security system. Okay, they're just all locked down. Well, it's not just the fact that they lock. They want to know who entered at what time. And so all these devices get very, very complicated. And so I learned again at Nixon because they have secure files. They have information that has national security classification, and we had to provide for those in our design. And so we're, another kind of funny story is that our work had to comply with provisions of Homeland Security, which is kind of challenging, but also the work had to be inspected by the CIA. And so there's a whole story. I'm not going to go into that, but interesting having a CIA inspection of your facilities. But they did give us pretty clear information. We were able to put together the right specifications and all that. And so I would say as you enter into the process of security design, you may want to bring in the client's security company and make sure your design requirements work with that. Okay, so that functionality aspect, of course, we want this stuff to be able to function for a long time, unless it's a throwaway type of design. And I'm not going to go into what that can be, but obviously doors are expensive. The doors there at school going into the classroom run, well, the hardware alone runs about $1,000. The door itself probably runs close to $1,000, might be $700-800. The installation clearly is about $200 or $300 a door. So when you get done, you're looking at $2,500 to $3,000 a door installation. So this is a big part of a budget. If the client says, I want to watch my costs, they may ask you to reinstall the doors. That means that you, as a designer, need to go audit the doors and understand which doors work for relocation. By the way, that's an additional service. That's a design fee that, takes some energy and takes some time to do. But, from that standpoint, just understand the difference between, your design longevity and what, those building standards are going to be and how you're going to make those work together. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of parts, and we can't show every part on a drawing. So what we're dealing with here is a situation where we can list door parts with some descriptions and the use of a door and frame schedule. And we're going to go through this in a little bit, but this is one of your activities that you're going to be involved with tonight or during this assignment. And it's a little bit of a puzzle, but it's not that hard. You just need to kind of get your brain wrapped around a little bit, and we'll talk more about it as we get into the assignment. But as we do this, we can now identify elements of the door. We start with a door inventory there, and we always start with 100 or 101 and then list them. Then we talk about the door size, the door type, and we'll look at door types in just a minute. And that door type will provide us with a written description of what that door is. Is there glazing, meaning is there glass in the door? What is the frame material? Is it wood or is it aluminum? What is it made of? What are the details, which we'll be talking about in 2 weeks? Where are they found? What details are applicable? Are there fire rating considerations? What is the hardware group that we're concerned about? Are there security requirements? A note for additional referencing here, and then we put that door number over here because sometimes as we're traveling across the schedule, we lose our place, so we can look at it. It's just an easier way to track where we're at in the schedule. So as a result, we have all sorts of elements that we're picking up in this, and that they may include all these different features. So with that, we can start to look at how do we actually produce this information. This information is, as we've talked about, starts as we look at, the program, we look at the space plan that the senior designer's done, we go back to our construction plan, and we start looking at doors, and we start to figure out a strategy for numbering them in a succession or in a kind of a sequential way, so that door 101, door 102, door 103 is not some haphazard number like 1, 6, 3. I mean, where the contractor can follow them in a pretty orderly fashion, because we want to make it easy for them. And in there, we will also see a symbol that indicates the door number, we'll see in a minute, the door type, and the hardware type. So all three of those will tell us a whole bunch of information about that specific location. So as we talked about, if it's possible, we're going to try to utilize interior elevations. So rather than redraw something, we may be able to copy and paste it off some other part of the drawings to make it work. And our goal here is to actually draw door types. And in this particular case, we're showing, kind of an interior elevation of 2 doors in a storefront system. But we've also identified it as a type of window or type of door assembly. So that's something kind of to keep in mind. All right, we're then going to go back and understand our our wall types to see, what elements are necessary to understand about the kind of door or wall that we're putting this door into. So we're just going to review that. Then from that elevation aspect, we're going to draw the door type. And oftentimes, we'll list the type of door that's provided. We will provide a detail reference that is important for the threshold, the jamb, and the head condition. And that means every time these these reference numbers are listed, these are applicable. So we don't have to chase on the floor plan every time a door is listed, all these details. We're saying, go to the door window sheet and you can find that information. We give some nominal sizing for the door, but we know that it's also provided in other information. So we're going to draw the door. These are very schematic or very simple door illustrations, and so they're not difficult. Okay. All right. So next, we're going to go and we're going to identify each type of door by text. So I've given this is what the schedule will look, the door type listing will look like. And so I'm just blown up this section, and you can see the kind of language we've provided. Can it get more elaborate? Heck yeah, we can talk about truck doors, we can talk about all sorts of other types of doors, but for example, we can identify in this that we've given the door size, that the door is to match the building standard, so they don't have to look too far, they could get that information. The door frames are to also match the building standard, and the doors to be prepped to accommodate all the hardware and the finishes that we've specified elsewhere. In a similar way, we're going to list the hardware. So we're going to say, please provide us with, a lever handle lock set with 3 pair butt hinges and a door stop and the door hardware to match building standards. So that's provided there. So when we come over to the door schedule, we know the door number, we know the door size, we know the door type E being existing. Does it have glazing? Yeah, it's got glazing. It's got a metal aluminum frame because it's part of that storefront element. And we don't have to worry about the detailing because it's already provided in there. But you can see that how, as we go across, and here is our existing, E for existing, hardware group. So if we went back and we looked at existing, we'd see down here, existing door hardware to remain. Existing type and installation are to be reviewed for damage, and existing finishes in general operations. Make sure that they're working correctly. Okay, so after we get that, then we can complete, we go back and check the construction plan to make sure the two are coordinated and that they say the same thing. We don't want to provide information in these documents that are conflicting. So we don't want this to say door 101 to say C when it actually C on the previous schedule when it should say B. So that's really important because those conflicts are our responsibility. So being detail oriented is very helpful. Now, I mentioned earlier that if you have a really large project, it might be okay to bring in a door hardware consultant, and they usually, believe it or not, are paid by the door manufacturers or the hardware manufacturers. So their service can be free. If it's really wacky, they may charge you some nominal amount. And when I'm preparing a scope of service or a contract for a project, and I'm looking at a project that might have 100 doors, I'm going to put in $10,000 for the hardware guy. And usually that covers me for any of those costs. But understand, if you try to do it, you can do it. I've done them. They're just challenging. So anyway, that service is available. Okay, so then we have door notes that help the contractor understand what we expect on the door, on the doors that are being installed. And so this is just notations that help to make sure that that what we get in the finished installation is compliant with what we're desiring in our design. So we talked about security previously. Here, we have come up with our own detailing and notations that get us down the road towards a security system. Now, why do we do this? Well, what we have found is that the owner may have a security company. It doesn't mean they're a good security company. And I've learned this the hard way. So we're going to be proactive in our documents, and we're going to put out there what we anticipate the security system to be based upon what the owners told us in the programming and design review. And if we're wrong, it's up to the security consultant to correct us during this part of the document. So as we put it down, we'll send it to them and we'll say, tell us what we need to correct. And if they don't, they're responsible for it. But at least we have everything covered in the contractor's price for some system, and it works rather well for us. So with that, we're going to just check our notes, make sure everything is, is correct, that all the any specialty noting is picked up. And with that, we've pretty much completed the process of door construction documents. Now, I will also tell you that we're really not in this course going deep into discussions and specifications. I will talk about those probably as we get closer to the end of the semester, because it's a pretty rich topic, and it takes some description that is almost easier. It's not real easy to do in this format, but we'll introduce you to it, so you're not so at least you have some parts to look at and think about.